is good for the gander.
Here we go. It's the Unthink Me show.
The incredible
That
and edible and think me
Danielle and
show.
sometimes James and sometimes other people too. And the song goes on for a while and then you kind of get bored. Well, guys, we're up to the second tier now. We're just like we promised. We didn't change the stages over the week. They're all the same. Well, they do change sometimes, but not much. So we're getting into Teal today, formerly Spiral Dynamics Yellow Yonder, as ChatGPT put it, and we had to look up what the word yonder means. It's like
Don't you
over
lump me
there,
into that? I've
from
used
there.
Yonderneath since the documentary Vernon, Florida came out.
Let's all have a clap. Let's kind of pickle this out a little bit here. So,
Okay.
you, orange is the first meme that's kind of like factually right about
Average?
which again, we point out it's kind of strange, but it's like you've figured out this methodology that makes you right about stuff. And so that becomes your hammer. And Orange is obsessed with these ideas of provable truths and universal absolute facts. And so that seems like the end, and that's a joke we make a lot, and that's an actual observation that people have about this model is like, I think it actually stops at Orange Rational and doesn't continue. But developmentalists, like looking at people and how they change over time, they're like, well, it does change after rational, and it changes in predictable cross-cultural ways. What happens in green is that there's a sort of predominance to the perception that, like, if I were born as any other person in the whole world and I had their body and their upbringing and their life, I would be them. I couldn't use their body to get to the top because I wouldn't have my values or thoughts or opinions and all the structure that I've been indoctrinated with and created in my life. I would exactly be that person. So in a way, like, this is to speak about like third tier recognition of this, the fundamental constant of consciousness that all people are the same thing before you start adding stuff to it. So for green, you don't, there's that we stop dismissing every other perspective that doesn't conform to this rationalist ideology. It becomes a lot more egalitarian. It's like, why should this person be successful? Everyone is consciousness, and we've all had our circumstances. All people should be able to get to like the same level of
Mm.
success, of prosperity, of happiness. And orange is like, well, you got to earn it. You got to, but who are you to say what earning is? You're privileged. You didn't earn the things in your life. You were in a system that gave them to you, and you were flowered by this system. So it's like it's not acceptable that most people are not satisfied with the situation of existence. It's not anyone's fault. It's just not great. It's not the final out. It's not a final positive outcome. So so now we have this kind of head to head. Orange and green are very different in some ways, even though on the surface they kind of look the same. But these are all first tier perspectives because they aren't playing around much with this fundamental fact of the difference between them. They try to not acknowledge it because green is looking at orange saying, well, we're both just conscious beings. And orange is looking at green saying, well, rationality is just correct, always, for everyone. So it's universal. So we are the same in that sense. And then basically all Teal's doing is coming along and noticing that. So Teal brings in a recognition of stages of consciousness, and always like to point out most integral thinkers, most Teal meme people are completely unaware of integral theory, Ken Wilber, altitude, spiral dynamics, because these are a way of expressing Teal meme, but they're not the Teal meme. Teal meme just arises in nature, and it's a great example of Teal meme. And if you're to say like Teal meme means that you start to identify evolution of consciousness, stages of consciousness, then it's like, well, okay, so what are stages of consciousness? If Teal meme recognizes stages of consciousness to some extent, they have to start looking at people who research stages of consciousness. And what Wilber does in integral psychology is there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these models in existence of just how children develop, how adults develop, how people are different, how predictable patterns of the way that people's thinking changes, and you arrive at these really similar looking models over and over again. They're like aren't models that differ from the way that spiral dynamics looks, really. They might just get a little section of it, but the unfolding is like identical. And this is what Wilber noticed and what kind of an integral thinker makes. And so that, even though it's like a small thing, it's a pretty big game changer because both orange and green are entrenched in a belief system unknowingly. Teal is knowingly not entrenched in a belief system. So this really weird thing starts to happen with the Teal meme character. They are sort of anti-identity. They don't want any baggage.
The Human Torch was denied a bank loan.
So as you do begin to recognize and integrate stages of consciousness, it makes it harder for you to buy into any particular one. And so the Teal meme character, what's recognizable is this not digging your heels in, not being an idea or a paragon of anything or a perfect person or a good person, but just kind of seeing, comprehending, experiencing, interacting, flexing, and flowing with the system. So it's very anti-anti. It doesn't like reject anything. It's just this like, okay, information's coming at me. I take that in, I filter it, I organize it because it's a lot. You can't even get it all. It's this tendency to actually organize the information coming at you in terms of various paradigmatic systems, which might be these things we're borrowing from psychology, such as lines, types, quadrants, states, levels. So that's why those are like the 5 modules of integral theory, is these are all different ways to pick apart what actually is the difference between people if it's not race or gender or status or, you know, affiliation of any sort. But if we are just simply consciousness piloting bodies, which is sort of the Teal meme self-sense, then we're all like sort of identical in that sense. And so the differences between us are explainable in terms of this sort of multi-factor grid of 5 modules that also themselves have all these different parameters. So now, instead of like having this story that we walk around with, instead of being a narrative story character, we're now like sort of a Dungeons and Dragons stat sheet. We're like a system interacting with a greater system, an individual system interacting with a collective system. Okay, yeah, that's a rundown of the orange, green, teal movement, because I think that does need some unpacking. That's an important.
I think something that's really hard to do, and I've touched on a couple of times in my life, is your own personal values. Everybody has them. Everybody has their own moral compass. They all have these own things, but you really only think about it when it's challenged. Someone says like, oh, you know, your religion or your sexual preference or your whatever, fill in the blank, your values. How many times have you actually challenged yourself and then been honest with yourself about what you think about these things? Someone or people who are...
I call this making a judgment. Yeah.
Yeah. Have asked themselves, because like now I have time and the freedom mentally to question my own values. And where do they come from? Are they mine, or were they given to me and I've just glued to them over time? And I feel like if someone who is in Teal has asked themselves those things and has made the conscious effort to abandon things that they've believed their entire lives, values that they've believed in their entire life, because they actually asked themselves. It didn't come up in a challenge. Someone is challenging you or you are challenging someone else. Then you're going to be sort of stuck in that meta, this is me and that's it, where there's no change happening. The really hard part is being honest with yourself and having the willingness to abandon something that you've held so dear your whole life.
Dude, that's beautiful. I really like that. I think that's a really good description. Like, I think the Teal feeling, like the feeling of being, the positive feeling, is just this like, oh my God, I'm awake right now. I don't know everything. I don't know the whole story. I'm getting all this. It's like very now oriented. this idea of not knowing being like central to you, like not being anyone, not having a system, or I do have like structures, I do have keys, but it's like it's
Is that
wide
structure flawed?
open.
Is that
Yeah,
key flawed? Is it a duplicate key?
right. It's like the key is molded into the shape that fits in the keyhole of a particular hole. And we're trying to figure out like, well, what is a key? Can I make a key grinder? Can I
Mhm.
open any lock?
Right.
Can you do that shit with paper clips? Yeah, you can. I gotta say, this is what I was feeling. The teal meme yearning is like, no, but like, what do you really think? Like, not
You
not what
no
everyone
yeah
thinks, not what the
no
right
no
answer is, but
exterior
like,
stimuli. Just
really,
you.
like, just thinking about it right now. How do
Mhm.
you judge this? What do you think? And it's so hard to get that out of yourself, about your own actions, about your own past, about what's going on now. It's so hard to get that out of other people in relationship, in work, you know, and when you're doing business stuff. It's like, okay. I get what they're saying, what that thing is, what that, but let's look at this right now. What do you think? You know, it's so hard to do because it's like we don't think. We
Well,
run
you
models against each
to
other.
to put another layer on that, that part is being honest with yourself. Like
Yeah.
that's something that it's
And
really freeing.
others, which
But
is harder for me.
the
Yeah.
next step there is, what if you disagree after analyzing with yourself? Don't involve anybody else, because then you have external stimuli. What if you discover something that you don't agree, or you haven't agreed with your predetermined archetype of whatever this is? The ability to say, you know what, I'm going to let that go and think a different way. That's almost impossible. That's really hard. The honesty, super hard. Being able to abandon something or a value that you have fought for because you actually thought about it and you don't agree with it anymore. That abandon is so freeing, but so hard.
Yeah. And still this stuff has never I've never really had that moment where I'm like, okay, this isn't helping, this is nonsense, this doesn't, it's really the opposite. Is like, as I go through life, I'm like, man, this the integral theory thing needs to come out more. It isn't bullshit. Everything else is bullshit. And I just want to bring this out and see more of it and give more of it, because it is compatible with the reality that I'm experiencing
Mhm.
at this time as I make this judgment now. It's stayed with me, not because I dig my heels in, but because it is like it's like I don't, other models and systems and ideas and thinkers and emotionally compelling points, they kind of come and go with me,
Mhm.
but you know, I'm never ever dropping the scientific method for discovering provable truths.
It's a good one.
And integral theory is kind of the tool set that allows having philosophical thoughts that don't like dovetail into an endless loop of misunderstanding, and having a point against another point that never moves, which is, you know, how we how I spent my late teens and early 20s, was an endless loop of argumentation. That was like intellectual discourse for me, fighting
Yeah.
against someone to prove a point.
You have your value. You
Nobody
have
ever won.
your standing ground is your value, or your moral or whatever, and I'm going to fight for the to the death, verbally, to uphold it. But once you're able to ask yourself, do I actually, like, let's dig into that myself, might change, and then
Yeah.
being able to accept that change, and now you're going with the flow. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
I wanted to do a little bit of extra talking about the transition to second tier, teal, former yellow. There's only two stages of consciousness in the second tier, teal and turquoise. To an uninitiated, they look pretty similar, so we might do a little more talking in turquoise about how to kind of pick those apart. So in storytelling, now it's like in
Oh,
second
oh, oh, oh,
tier,
oh.
yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
one more thing.
Uh-huh.
You're discussing with a couple, you're having a conversation with a couple anthropologists over here.
Mm-hmm.
Once we get into second tier, it's the first time that it hasn't existed in human development. We can't
Yeah.
compare to Rome. We can't compare to Neanderthals.
Yes.
We can't compare to the 1950s.
And
There's
there's
nothing.
not
There's
like
no.
Josh down the street who's third tier, modeling that for us.
Yeah. There's no. There's no cultural development to compare it to because culturally, as humans, we haven't got there yet. So
This is
that
emergent.
there's a very big difference ticking over this imaginary line into second tier. All it really means is there aren't tribes, societies, cultures,
Yeah,
countries who've gotten there yet to compare to on the individual to like mass comparison. It doesn't exist yet, so it's exciting.
exactly. And this is part of what makes them tierfiable is like first tier we can point to
I'm
zillions
terrified.
of examples and it's worn in. It's like it's broken in. We can point to really obvious like archetypes and the repetition of them. And it's like nauseatingly familiar going through the first tier.
Well, and as you know, for those keeping score at home, each tier takes shorter and shorter to get to.
Yep.
So, I mean, an exciting thing
Possibly a
is in
factor of
our
10.
lifetime or next generation lifetime, we can see second tier. It's possible.
Possibly due to the way that second tier works in general, it never will be worn in and it never will have a recognizable like cultural groove or maybe we don't know. Again, these are things we don't know. So second tier has this status of it does exist, there are people doing it, there are subcultures, but there's definitely no like recognizable like pattern, there's no big social movement. As we get into third tier, they're very unrecognizable, they're exotic, they're
Hmm.
strange, and you'd be hard pressed to find individuals that exist at these levels. So the different tiers are very different in terms of like how widespread and recognizable and worn in they are. And by design, the higher stages don't rely on structure as much. They're kind of anti-structural. They're tentacular. They're flexing and flowing, or they're exploring different states of consciousness. So they probably won't ever have this like archetype or this plastic mold that cookie cutters them out. Maybe. So we're talking about emergent stuff, and we have to speculate more and more as we go up. So
Hmm.
getting into storytelling, we're kind of speculating that what happens with the nature of storytelling in the second tier is there's a sort of pushing of the responsibility of storytelling onto the audience and onto technology. An alternate reality game, ARG, would be a good like idea of a second tier sort of structure where it gives you some seed money, gives you a little bit of stuff to play with, but then the actual game is the participants. Like you're the person that creates the story by interacting with other people in real life in your alternate reality. So to whatever extent fiction stories pick up elements like that, we're starting to possibly see second tier storytelling. An example of that might be the television show Lost. The whole point of Lost is you can't figure it out. So you go and talk to other people, you go on Reddit, you watch YouTube videos. Lost, Five Nights at Freddy's, Twin Peaks, Game of Thrones. They don't come with answers to their own riddles. I
Hmm.
don't know who this is and what they're doing. I
They're
don't
not going to tell
know
you.
where the story's going. And they don't tell you. And so it's like, well, you figured out this is your quest. So it's pushing that responsibility off. And this is what I call mystery box style storytelling. The responsibility becomes sort of a collective thing rather than the artist auteur type that feeds you a story. It's like, let's make a story together, guys. I'm the dungeon master. I will provide you with some characters and settings, and we're just going to go. We're all going to create this together because we're all creative. So I think we might be able to find that in some horror movies. Any horror movie that's very stage aware, it's hard to tell the difference between a story that's just really, really, really well told. If you really get in your characters' headspaces and you really get into the collective situation and it's really historically accurate all at once, it'll start looking like it recognizes stages of consciousness. I brought up Game of Thrones. That's a great example. You see all the stages of consciousness. You see all the states of consciousness. You see all the lines, all the types. Like the whole integral model's there. Is that because the author Martin knows Wilbur, or is it just because he sees things? Like he's just telling, like, if I was this character, I would think this, I would have these friends who think this, I would believe this about myself, I would have to do this with my life. And it just produces an integral world by being extremely accurate about what it is to be a human being. Hard to know. I would accuse George R. R. Martin of being an integral thinker, and will do so. So we're gonna look for that in horror. And I was all over the map. I talked about video games, and I talked about House of Leaves as like a book example of a horror mystery box sort of concoction.
So it's as exotic as a maple bar or a chocolate dip banana.
Oh.
One cool thing is that as we do ask ChatGPT if it can do our work for us, it is finding the same movies that we are in general. At least the top three like are
I feel
usually
validated.
yeah, exactly. Chicken with his
have
head
to
cut
be on
off
the right
came up with
track.
the same answer.
If AI is coming up with the same thing, yeah.
And it really likes the cosmic horror for second tier. I like cosmic horror for Indigo, for stage 9, I would say, is where I start getting Lovecraftian. We have some runners up, which will be fun to discuss because we're not, again, we never said we were right. The Nightmare Before Christmas. Okay. It is,
I mean, nightmare's in the name.
it's a scary, yeah, it's got a Halloweeny kind of feel. It's integrating holiday notions. It's abstracting the type system of holidays and integrating holidays together, which is creative. It's a pretty unique spin. I don't know. What is Nightmare Before Christmas? Green meme?
Mm,
Hammer
well,
meme?
it could be Teal because he's looking at his foundational values, Halloween, All Hallows Eve, and abandoning it for something more commercial, but abandoning it for the reasons of excitement and something new. It's tough.
Yeah.
It could be Teal in that like it's a very higher level looking into his own value system and then abandoning it so easily. But
I
is he
think
abandoning it for his own good or for the greater good to like save a community? Are these the gems is Christmas the gems in Goonies?
I'm
It's not
seeing a
worth it.
lot of green meme in the Tim Burton filmography. It's sort of this acceptance of death and ugliness and mutilation and embracing of it. Like Corpse Bride's a great example. It's sort of like playful and fun and happy in this world of like death and decay and like afterlife. I think that's the mainstream appeal of it. It's sort of the gothy thing. It's like, oh, dark stuff, that's me. Halloween stuff. I'm spooky. Do you think I'm
It's
spooky?
macabre.
Yeah, as a good thing.
Macabre.
And so it's reaching out into that otherness and saying like, yes, that's me. It's like identifying with it. So lots of green, possibly teal. And that word integral, right, is very associated with Teal and Ken Wilber. He didn't make up that word. Integral yoga existed, Aurobindo before that. And in general, as developmentalists try to figure out what this stage is that comes after green, it's usually the last stage that they propose. And it's always called something like integrative or integral, interparadigmatic. Something about synthesizing perspectives is
It's
always like
integral.
the clutch of
It's
it.
everything.
Systemic,
It's so important that it's integral
It is integrated into everything.
integral,
on how you
or
pronounce it.
integral, integral.
Integral.
It's okay. Any way you say it is fine. It's gyros, but say it how you want. And
Oh, I'm not saying you're
both of the
definitely
pronunciations are correct.
yeah, I'm not saying your pronunciation is wrong. I'm saying if you say integral, it becomes more of like a structural thing. Where you say integral, it sounds more like integration.
Integral calculus.
Yeah.
I do like integral because integrate is my like root of it. I don't like, I think that a lot of people say integral because it sounds like integrity man, which it's like, okay, there's some integrity there, but the point is integrating, synthesizing, bringing things together. Both are
And
correct pronunciations.
yeah,
Yeah. And integral is not right, but it's cute. if you say integral.
Join us next week for the adventures of Intragirl. Holy smokers.
Holy
integral.
Integral.
And so we push the second tier, just like that's kind of what we're pushing out there. There's higher stages. We're not fascinated with them. We'll talk about them. And we talk about first tier a good amount, but that's not really our shtick either. We're not really embroiled in all that. We're kind of just pushing the second tier, or just trying to educate, teach, get a dialogue going on a second tier level, hopefully something like that, without fucking it up, hopefully, right?
Fuck it up. I feel like second tier is also has the freedom of saying nobody's wrong and nobody's right. It's all perspective. And so you can look into something that maybe you disagree with and realize that it's a perspective-based thing. It's not wrong. It's not right. It's a perspective of somebody else who's not you. So it's okay. It's right.
Yeah, like the green meme radical acceptance of all perspectives is it's almost kind of insulting. It's almost kind of like disrespectful. Second tier, you accept the other perspective, but you're trying to figure it out. You're trying to place it somewhere. You're trying to go like, okay, so what is this person talking to me? What are they thinking and feeling? Like what is their actual nature? Which is, to me, seems more respectful than just like, well, you have all the dignity in the world. I don't even know you. I don't know where you're coming from. You could have any history, but I give you the full benefit of the doubt, the full dignity, my trust, my money. That's kind of the green meme angle. Teal's like, I see you. I get you. I'm not throwing any money at this. Like, it's not going to help anything. I'm not... my compliments will fall on deaf ears. Like the good Lord would talk about pearls before swine. That's sort of a second tier notion. It's like you can cast pearls before swine, and they'll roll around in them. You know, it's not harming them.
What philosopher got into no one knowingly or willingly does evil? It's all perspective and rationale based.
Sure, the problem of evil as like a fundamental philosophical issue. It's like, why would anyone do anything bad?
Right. To the individual, they're not.
And so Green's like, well, because they're suffering, because they need things, you know. Teal's like, no, some people they're fucking tricksters, they're gremlins, you know.
Could
some
be
people
mental illness, could be
mad.
A dopamine hit to do something that they full well know is wrong. But there's so many perspectives.
Yeah. And never really holding on or clinging to any of those, but just like, okay, well, there's addiction,
recognizing that they all
abuse.
Exist.
Yeah, there's this totally unique special snowflake that needs to be nurtured and developed, and it has this set of parameters associated with it. Danielle has seen more movies than James or I have, and
in this particular
in this
week,
realm.
We were listing off movies. Chat Gibbet was listing off movies that Danielle's like, oh, that's a good one. Oh yeah, that's a good one. Oh, I remember that one.
She was participating in the last 20 years of movies.
It's true.
In the horror genre, yeah, for sure.
Tell us a little bit about Annihilation so we can try and figure out if it's a second tier picture.
Okay.
I know there's a bear that screams like a woman.
Yeah.
And that didn't even register.
Na 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 na. See, that was written out.
Ferngully.
Yeah, I've got my levels to the point where it's used to me yelling. Still didn't go orange. If I go like this, jump scare.
Okay.
Danielle had a heart attack.
Good Lord, yeah. If I remember correctly, there was like something crash landed on the Earth. And it created this like orb thing that was like oily, like I don't even know, but they send a bunch of scientists
Was it black?
No,
was it made
like
of
iridescent.
Polished black oily stone?
Like, just like iridescent.
Okay. Was it electric green?
No. What?
Okay.
And so they get a group of scientists together, and like military people, I think, as well, because why not? Because I need to talk louder, and this is still not registering.
Remember, I'm standing over there, and you're talking to me.
I just feel like I'm shouting though.
Can I have a glass of water?
You're not
feel like
shouting. You're fine. Yeah.
It's not? Okay, 'cause
Lean
it
into
feels
it.
like-
Yeah.
Because he can turn the levels down during editing if it is louder than
Okay.
the thing.
Uh,
Turning it up,
yeah.
you lose you start to get grainy and lose quality.
I would say just general broadcasting tip, like you can be way loud, like be as loud as you possibly can. People like that. More
Okay.
tonal
Is that your
variance,
primal?
No.
All
dynamics,
right,
and tonal
primal scream.
variance. Yeah.
1, 2, 3, go.
And then she just loaded it full of shells. Now I've seen the bear part, kind of.
I thought it was creepy. Well, I know I
And-
didn't have a lot to say earlier when you guys were just talking colors.
It's not that you just didn't have a lot to say. It's that you're talking like this, and then I tell you to be louder, and then you talk quieter, but you get closer to the microphone.
I'm sorry.
Acting.
Okay.
When I was doing video gaming shows, this got like really nailed in. It's like if you watch like a person playing video games that's like successful, they're like shouting like the whole time, and they're just alone.
Did you guys
in
see
their
that?
room.
Oh my god!
Yeah, like what? Oh, you know, it's crazy how loud they're being. And same with radio. If you were like sitting in the studio, like, hey, we got a guest here, some guy, you know, they're just screaming.
Yeah.
And it's just because like
Because
I don't
you
know. That's what we're jiggling keys. You know, that's what people want.
If you
and
Alright.
people just like dynamic.
The IMDb summary of Annihilation was a group of scientists go into a zone and find that things are defying the laws of nature in this zone. Starring Natalie Portman. She is one of the scientists that goes into the zone, and
She's entering a
yeah,
zone of comprehension, and
the zone, the Twilight Zone.
you're entering
She
a place where
enters-
time and space enfold into matter.
you need to have a lit
place
cigarette if
where
you're going to be Rod
thoughts
Stern.
become things, people, the secret. Where the
out the
unimaginable
enemy was
becomes
man.
the factual, and the truthful becomes the obscene, and the unseen becomes the known. And
I'm
the
sorry to
known-
steamroll your whole conversation, but the thing that got me, and they changed it in season 2. He says, "From the pit of man's fears to the summit of his knowledge." Oh, gorgeous.
Mm,
to
Word
the
choice.
yellow yonder beyond, and the amber mire,
Well, underneath.
yeah, there-
indigo blanket.
Hello.
Fucking vampires.
Go on,
All right,
go on,
all
go
right.
on.
So
Go on.
the scientists have entered the zone, and basically they see
A zone of the unspeakable, a zone of riddles, a zone that is unlike
Keep going. There's only
the
one thing to
connected
do.
dots
Let's move
world
forward.
that you are accustomed to.
Zone.
A zone like any other, but unlike any other.
I
A
don't
zone
know.
of
I don't
pure
even know if
imagination.
this is Teal, to be honest with you
Not
guys.
dissimilar.
Well, that's
from
that's
every
the topic. Yeah, like
That's
what
the
do you
topic,
think?
and I
you
don't
judge
know.
it.
So I'm just
made it
giving
up.
you the summary, I guess. Scientists have entered the zone, and they are seeing things are defying the laws of nature.
A
Things are
zone where
starting
things defy the laws of nature.
things. So plants, animals, bears.
Defying natures could be second tier, maybe.
So everything starts to like genetically merge. So
Okay,
the
all right.
bear thing, I don't know, things become the most dangerous version of themselves. Like one of the creatures
Okay.
that you see is this fucking crazy ass crocodile that has like 12 rows of teeth or something. Like so basically it took on like shark teeth and Sharkodile became just this crazy monster. And yeah, the bear is apparently, the bear that creeped me out, it doesn't have like skin on its face, so it's just like bone.
It's kind of a possum-y guy.
I don't think it has eyeballs because when it's looking for them, it's listening. But the part that creeped me out is when it is starting to mimic the scream of one of the people it ate earlier. And it was this woman, and she was crying for help for her friends.
I thought she was
And
dead.
But
She
it's
been
the
dead.
bear.
As she's
But
dying,
it's
she's
the
crying.
as she's crying out for help. But then it's the fucking bear, and you're just I just died a little. It was very
Premise-wise, this is sounding a little like The Thing. Like a mutant making, it turns all biology into like a monster mutant thing that's trying to
kind
get
of,
into
yeah.
you, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, everything has become like more dangerous, the best version of
Okay.
evolution.
Okay.
I guess.
Evolution. Okay, biological evolution.
So
All right.
And like I said, kind of mixing, the best things of, the shark teeth into a crocodile that's already a pretty vicious predator.
So we got some integration and synthesis.
Yeah.
We're making some tenuous connections here. And we're, probably not overall a Teal meme film, but we're going to find those threads.
Yeah. Well, like you mentioned earlier, I think the higher up in the colors we get, it's a little harder to find something that's tangible
in the
For sure.
in the
especially
horror
movie-wise.
genre. It's difficult.
So we had seen things such as Kevin Smith's Tusk, and it's like, well, how is that second tier? Unclear, I would say overall, but see, I think this is still the green meme. Like, for example, Shyamalan or the Kevin Smith movies, I think they're challenging, but they don't push the storytelling responsibility off. They don't really create movements or memes all that much. It's more just challenging. It's more just, paranormal activity. Like, what can a movie be? What if it's just showing footage of a house and maybe things startle you and maybe they don't?
For an hour and a half.
For a whole feature
Jump
length.
scare.
Well, it turns out it's
Ken Burns
very
horror movie
successful.
where it's just zooming in and out of a photograph.
And so this is kind of the green, this is still to me
There's
kind of green meme world.
Something
where
in the house.
Oh,
And then they do that one shot. Where like,
Oh,
oh,
God.
that's so
All
scary that
herky-jerky.
something is shaking really fast.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
yeah.
Experimentally kind of stuff and like horror movies in that zone, I'm not really putting it second tier. And like, again, Shyamalan, we talked a lot about Shyamalan. There's lots of movies to look at, and they all have this sort of thing where they're challenging storytelling notions or kind of challenging audience expectations. That's still feeling pretty green meme to me. And the movie Rubber was suggested as well. Not as well known, but pretty niche. Rubber is a movie that takes place in the desert where there's a rogue tire, a rubber tire that is pursuing and harming people. It doesn't go into detail about like why particularly. It's more like a existential quandary of like, well, there just is a killer tire. That's what's up. And the movie's very
That is
like
what's up.
plain spoken about that. In a way, I'm almost seeing that one starting to cross the divide because it's reaching a point of absurdity. Like Tusk is not absurd. Lady in the Water, The Happening, I wouldn't
Tusk
put
is
those.
Tusk is pretty out there. Do you
They're
know?
out there, right? But it's not like just like when someone comes up, there's a movie about a tire that goes and kills people. Okay, that's ridiculous. You're like, there's a movie where this guy's being surgically transformed into a walrus. Yeah, it's disgusting. Like,
Pretty freaking gross.
What was
Yeah,
the-
just
what-
to warn people, that one grossed me out pretty good too.
What was the name of the movie where all the tractor trailers, the semis, become evil?
Maximum Overdrive.
Yeah, another inanimate object being the antagonist.
Or Christine was the car that was
The
evil.
cars, yeah.
What's the one? What's the one about the lounge, the Barca lounger chair? That is
Ooh, a
evil?
lamp. A scary lamp.
You know that one?
No.
Oh yeah, we've watched the trailer. We haven't watched it, but there's one where it's a lounge chair.
In all of these cases, I'm still seeing like, well, that's a movie. You could make a movie out of that. The rubber tire is pushed to where the only reason you would make that movie is for people to talk about it. It's a discussion point. You don't make that movie because you're into the
Not
story.
winning awards.
Yeah, I'll bet you Rubber has a pretty high like audience rating. Well, who knows? Let's
He's looking.
find out.
I'll look.
He's checking.
James, how many licks does it take?
A 1, a 2, a 3, a crunch.
Never made it without biting.
We can do 12 stages
yeah.
of eating a Tootsie Pop. Or a Reese's. That could be a good one.
I used to
67% on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's critical or audience?
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah!
Metacritic 59, IMDb 5.7 out of 10.
So it's considered acceptable.
It cost $800,000 to make and made in the box
Wow.
office 680. Lost
Damn,
about
okay.
112. What is the point of the movie? If you haven't seen Rubber, you don't need to. No, that's not what it says. All you really need to understand about the film is its underlying thesis, the doctrine of no reason. Especially the movie focuses on creating
Yeah,
absurdly after absurdity.
it makes a point of saying to the audience, like, we know we're being silly. This is
We know.
absurd. Don't they do like a little song number? They do something very like goofy. Like, this is just so far off the rails now. It's not even like, it doesn't even care about its own story. All right, so we got our banger that we've been saving because it actually is like an undisputed champion that ChatGPT agrees with us.
Should we,
Cabin
like,
in the
drum roll?
Woods. Oh yeah, well, we've already kind of blown it anyways in the last one, but nobody watched that. So surprise everyone, it's Cabin in the Woods. And so we were making a little distinction between like the Scream thing and the Cabin in the Woods thing, where you're kind of like, in one case you're like, ha ha ha, we're a horror movie, blah blah blah, and it still works as a horror movie with that like overshadowing it. But Cabin in the Woods is less, you're not even really supposed to care about the horror story. It's supposed to be like a cliche, and the whole fun of it is the meta. The meta elements are the story, which is not the case with Scream or with something that's just a little more self-aware. In Cabin in the Woods, the story is that it's not a horror story. It's not just these people in a cabin. It's this whole other overarching systemic
It's much
thing.
deeper. Yeah.
And it does have that element where a lot of the appeal is like having that spoiler and being able to like go out into the world and be like, oh my God, I saw this movie. It was so crazy. Like it did things about movies I didn't even know about. And
It hits all the cliches that every horror movie has in a controlled environment. The overseers are creating these cliches, nodding to that in horror movies, these ridiculous things that happen are created by an overseer.
it's kind of neat. Like sooner or later it has to happen. It's like Orange meme, like just it's got to happen. Like sooner or later, the storyteller is just straight up talking to the audience, like without any intermediary, without any like filter. It's just like, okay, we're making a story together. Here we go. Cabin in the Woods. This is everything about horror movies. This is all the monsters all at once.
All
and
the
we're gonna
horror movies in one.
make some sort of statement about the horror cosmos, some sort of integrating holistic statement about what a horror movie is, why they exist, what they do for people, why society needs them. I mean, is it successful at that? Maybe, maybe not. But as a prototype for that sort of idea, it was
successful? I'd say Rotten Tomatoes, an astounding 92%.
Oh wow.
Critically
That's great.
successful, commercially successful. I just mean successful in terms of like being comprehensive as a second tier presentation.
Box office was $66.5 million.
Oof.
Pretty sure they made it for a little less than that.
And definitely one of my favorite films personally.
It also says it's based on and a nod to The Evil Dead.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
yeah.
That's nice.
Oh yeah.
That's
I'm
nice.
gonna get very kind of them.
And again, that was because they knew they were in a horror movie. And then it was also the stereotypical horror movie themes, the jock, the hot girl, the nerd,
The stoner who's higher than a
Burnout.
giraffe's asshole.
the stoner, my favorite
So
guy.
it's like self-consciously,
Puppeteers, man.
it's not even like this is a character, it's like this is a type. It's like, here's a type system. These are the types of
Exactly.
characters in horror movies.
Typecasts.
Put them in there. They don't have any personality except for the one that supports that role.
Yeah.
The kind of loser characters, they're going to be front and center. And it's like, okay, there we go. Yep, that's what we were expecting. And then they actually do have like minds and personalities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the stoner
be
comes
the
through in the
foil.
end, man.
Yeah.
I had to take her apart with a trowel. He's like holding it, and it's like,
So I had put Shining on early, and I was kind of like, I didn't really know why. I was thinking like a lot of the fun of this is even just trying to justify like,
Yeah.
okay,
Just
so
throw
you
something
have
out there
like,
and then make your point.
I think that one thing that we were able to put together with The Shining is you have a sort of little miniature integral system in a way.
Yeah.
Like there's states are coming out a lot. You have like a abused child, a battered partner, and then this kind of guy who's a nice guy, an artist, but he's got mental illness and his own issues with like addiction and stuff. The story is told in a way that nobody is really right. There's no predominant perspective to it. I mean, it's almost from the perspective of a haunted hotel more than anything, like looking at these characters rather than being from the perspective of any particular character. If you were looking at it from the perspective of any character, it would be kind of a mess. Jack Nicholson doesn't seem to really have a grip on reality. Like from his perspective, everything would be kind of changing. And from the child's perspective, he's in like multiple realities at once with like invisible people and haunted spirits and psychic powers. Let's just call her Shelley Duvall. She's the closest thing to like a real perspective character, but she's also kind of in denial about what's happening, which kind of generates some of the confusion of the story. So states are well represented, and there's sort of a sense that the environment is the protagonist. Probably not a whole lot of second tier going on there. There is a sort of state experience of watching any Kubrick movie, particularly these ones with like really long, slow, very photographic shots. It kind of puts you into a state of mind suggestive of like Kubrick being in that state of mind. Very contemplative, reflective. In a lot of his movies, it's almost like you could sit in any like still from the movie as a photograph and just experience that as its own little island reality. Like every single frame of one of these movies, like The Shining, is itself like a quality picture. Like when Showcase hands you this movie, it really is pictures. It's not just a movie.
This is Stephen King's least liked movie by Stephen King. He did not like how it came out.
Yeah, he's
and I think it's kind of funny because, as you just said, Kubrick focuses on so much detail in the imagery, and Stephen King focuses on so much detail that there'll be 3 or 4 pages of a book that just explain like the room that the shit's about to happen in. I think he disliked it so much because it was so similar to what he actually does. Yeah, it's funny that he disliked it because I think those two pair so well.
I think he's just mad because it doesn't capture his story that well. It kind of abandons his deal to a certain extent, and he doesn't like the kind of adapting abandonment. So it's like, and then he made his own version and it sucked. So there you go. Yeah. Like
I did go down a rabbit hole on The Shining a few weeks ago about the architecture of the building and how the film just doesn't work. Ride around on the tricycle, like all of these rooms have to be closet sized because the lobby is on the other side. So these rooms could only be like 3 feet deep. To link it in,
you have this whole crowd of people who will take that and be like, "Well, that was deliberate. The continuity errors are all deliberate. It's to make it spookier."
That's kind of what I was getting at. Is that it's a movie that almost the intent of the movie is to get people to disagree with things and get talking in the real world. The movie itself, I really like.
So
talking about the movie is even farther. Like
here we go.
Of what it
this is the first time I'm really feeling it as like second tier. Legitimately, is when it happened. It actually wasn't a super popular movie. I will go on the record saying that. I think critics didn't love it that much, and also audiences didn't really get it. I would say I believe that at the time, and then it sort of grew and grew and grew to where now it's like this classic, and it's like one of the greatest, horror movies or even movies ever made. Maybe wrong, but I remember not liking it. I remember not being like enthralled with it at first. But it's doing that thing. It's saying like, okay, there's all these. It's mystery boxing. It's saying like, there's all these in all Kubrick, not Stephen King. It's like there's all this stuff that doesn't make sense. There's continuity errors. Stuff in the background changes. Characters change names. And so it's pushing that on the audience, saying like, well, what's really going on? Like,
you figure it out.
Is it the hotel being haunted? Is it some sort of conspiracy behind the scenes? Is it because Kubrick's trying to reveal that he faked the moon landing? Is it, actually the wife is abusive? There's all these narratives that people can come up with because there's so much ambiguity. But specific ambiguity, not accidental. It's like, he really wanted you to know that there's a big can of corn right there on the shelf. What does the can of corn mean? Maybe it means something to Kubrick, and maybe it could mean something thematically, but it's your job. You figure it out.
That can of corn got top billing.
So I'm seeing second tier, especially like as it evolves into internet culture, and it's been so much more embraced by this culture. I'm making the point, I could be wrong, but just off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure like that the success of that movie has come about as a result of people on the internet dissecting
The
it,
discussions around it more than it itself.
documentaries and conspiracy theories.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that is 100% mystery box second tier storytelling, possibly by accident.
Freaking nailed it.
We got it. We did one.
Yay.
It felt like a little barren in the teal nest.
Oh, I just tried to give you a thumbs up with my bad hand. Like,
Oh, there's the bird. Fuck you, everyone.
yeah. So when
On
I'm
accident.
driving, it's like,
Well, it sure has been lovely having you here, and we hope you watch all of our 12 Stages of Horror videos and all of our videos in general, particularly Adam James, often Danielle, talking spiral dynamics, bringing you along for our journey down the spiral. Be sure and hit that like and subscribe and join our Discord if you want to discuss integral theory with other people. We've just been having a ball making this series for you.
Quite.
yeah.
Quiet.
Welcome to second tier, the unknown.
Welcome to the unknown zone.
Integral theory. This will end in tears.
Where expectation meets befuddlement, and the defiant is resurrected into the place where
Metaverse.
The beyond.
Versity.
Yonder.
Metaversity.
Metaversity is good. Yeah, that's what tier 2 is all about.
Maybe this is the metaversity. Maybe this is the metaversity. I don't know. Last night, I was at the holiday, and I saw Cody
Gas station.
Trogdon.
Oh,
He,
refereeing the drag wrestling event.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was cool. Yeah, he was like, "Oh shit, man, is that Adam? Oh, that's Adam." Now, do you guys know the Phantasm movies?
I can
There's,
think
like,
of the cover of the film,
Tuning
but no.
fork thing that brings in
Is that the one with the ball with the little like,
Jawas.
spike on
Yep.
the front? Yeah,
Little
I can think of
orbs
it, but
that-
I don't know if I've seen them.
There's the
Oh,
tall
yeah.
man, Angus
Yes.
Scrimm, the tall man, and
Yes.
he's got the tuning forks that bring Jawas in from the other dimension, and then the little orbs that, and they had orbs. I think
Suck your
that was in
brain
Cabin
out.
in the Woods. They had an orb as like a tribute.
Mhm.
That's, and then yeah, they make little drills and they go into your head, or they like
And
they
it
have all
squirts
kinds
your
of
brain
devices.
out like a little tube. Yeah.
I think there was like
So
five or six.
when I was younger, my mom was like, "You have to see this movie because it scared me," and I was like, "It doesn't really seem that scary." She was like, "At the time, it was
Yeah, it was spooky. It was
Yeah,
strange
it's,
and spooky.
like uncomfortable." Like,
Yeah. And they made like one of those every 10 years or so. So the
Yeah,
the
that's
cast like
nice.
gets older and older, and the budget situation changes a lot, but they made them pretty faithfully.
The last volume is Bubba Hotep. They're in a nursing home.
Basically, it kind of is like that. Yeah, they're like old. It actually does do that. Yeah. I was trying to think of where that might sit, the Phantasm series. Cosmic, multidimensional, question your perspective, but it's still very like magenta red. It's still very like there are no rules, or the rules are like unclear. It's just an excuse to have a bunch of spooky stuff. I feel
I was
like
gonna say there's no real
those were
reason for it, right?
those were probably dreams. Those were probably somebody had dreams of like, I'm gonna make this into a movie.
Yeah.
These are crazy
great.
dreams. This is gonna be a movie. And then at the end of every one of the movies, the main characters all die. And then in the next movie, they just ignore that and just keep going.
Yeah, never mind.
That was a dream or something. We don't care.
Yeah.
You
don't
figure it
care,
out.
right? It's fine. We just wanted to have them all die at the end because it was cool.
It seemed to be the way the movie was going.
So what should we do? What should we do to increase our ratings and our earnings? What must we do?
Probably full frontal male nudity. That gets
I think
likes.
that's called OnlyFans.
You had
Yeah,
me
we-
with my. You had me in my bathing suit in the Oregon one. You get to see my chest. It's not a very revealing bathing suit.
Do you still have the one tuft of chest hair like dead center?
Well, in the
come out a
summer,
little
I
bit.
like shave my kind of neckline, like pretty much anywhere I'm in it, people will be able to see. So then
Stop
I have
shaving
like
that.
I have like a beard at the bottom of my boobs.
Start naring.
Nah. Nair.
So I would just take this Nair and just like slather it all over my
Yeah.
like upper body, and
Dude,
then it'll like
it's
stink,
lotion.
and I hang
It
out
does,
for
yeah,
like a half
Yeah.
hour.
it does
or
smell
something.
like a chemical reaction is happening because it is killing the follicle, but it doesn't grow back so fast, and you don't get ingrown hairs or razor burn.
So why do people shave their legs?
Tradition,
Yeah.
Really?
yeah.
Or some people
Okay.
have like